What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video, and today I'm bringing you guys a video on Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel episode 10. For those of you that don't know, this episode is the anniversary episode for the Power Rangers franchise, and today marks the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers. Also, it is a national holiday, officially National Power Rangers Day. That is now official. It's not something that we just make up and talk about. It is official, meaning that the show has gone on since 1993 till 2018 on this date. So think all the way back till then, till now. That's how long time has been. And that's a lot of time, believe me. So it's pretty cool to think that we actually have a national holiday for this franchise that so many of us love and have appreciated for so many years. This episode overall was really done well. The episode is called Dimension in Danger. There was lots of really cool references and little connections here and there. They even reference things that are outside of the main franchise, stuff from the comics that's also really cool, and even something that's previewing a detail that will be important in a comic that hasn't even come out yet. That's also really amazing to think that they're even referencing stuff that hasn't even existed in the main comic line yet, but is planned and it's official. Like we know for a fact this detail, and we'll get into that very, very quickly what I'm talking about. So anyway, let's get started. The episode begins with us seeing Tommy Oliver. He's exiting his van, and what happens is that he ends up getting a call. He ends up answering it. He apparently had been in a dojo, and he's heading back into his house. The house that they actually are using is the actual house from Power Rangers Dino Thunder, the house that he lived in there. And apparently in this story he has a son named JJ. That's actually something pretty cool. Now, the reason why that's cool for those who don't know is, first of all, obviously, it's nice to know that Tommy actually is a son now. Second of all, the other detail about that is the fact that JJ is actually supposed to be a reference to his son in the new Power Rangers comic known as Power Rangers Soul of the Dragon, which will be releasing December of this year, where he has a son named JJ, and he's married to Kat. And for those who don't know, for this this episode, it actually is kind of confirmed that, like, yes, he's supposed to be married to Kat. They don't specifically say it in an extended period of time or really focus in on it, but that's what's supposed to happen. So just so that you guys understand how that works. So the thing is that the reason why his son's even mentioned is because he has his bike outside, and so he says, like, I thought I told you to put your bike away. And so he's like, okay, I'll do it later, Dad. And so what happens is that we end up seeing all that happen, and suddenly he ends up being snuck up on by an enemy that recognizes him as Tommy Oliver. And then what happens is that it switches to the Ninja Steel Rangers. They're at their school having a normal day, and suddenly they're contacted by Mick to head to the base. So at that point they head into the base, and what happens is that they are having an urgent distress call that leads to them being worried about where it's coming from and what could be causing it. Suddenly the three hooded figures from the previous episode appear. The three hooded figures finally get to reveal themselves to the Rangers after the Rangers ask, can you just show your identities finally, since you've kept from us for so long? And it's like, yes, we can do this now. So at that point, first one to be revealed is Wes. Wes, the red Time Force Ranger, is shown off. He initially is shown as just in his Time Force outfit, but then he de-transforms, or demorphs, I guess you could say, and at that point we end up seeing Wes as Wes. Then we end up seeing RPM Silver, which is Gemma. She ends up demorphing. The Rangers know of Wes, they don't know of Gemma. So that's something worth noting. She's the RPM Silver Operator RPM Operator Series Silver Ranger. So we end up seeing her. Then the last one is Dino Charge Blue Ranger Coda. Yes. And also in the same situation like Gemma, they have no idea who he is. The reason why that is because they end up explaining the fact that we don't know of the two of them. They don't know of the two of them because of the fact that Wes and the Time Force Rangers develop special technology that allows them to travel between dimensions. And the idea is that when it comes to Gemma, she mentions that she comes from a dimension where it's ruled by an evil computer virus, and Coda mentions the fact that he comes from the Dino Charge universe, where the world has dinosaurs that are still existing and living in it to this day. So in other words, they come from different dimensions, which is also cool to know that it's officially confirmed now that Dino Charge has its own dimension, which makes sense because of how the story ended, and RPM makes sense because like that's been something for years and years, that RPM's been its own dimension. Though it's more so referred to in the comics, but now it's official in the show as well, so that's also really, really cool. So what does end up happening is that apparently they end up learning about that whenever when they travel between dimensions, it creates some disorder and problems with the morphing grid. And the idea is that apparently there several rangers have gone missing, and they need to, and they wonder if there's any disturbances that have been happening in the area. And the reason why is because they think it has something to do with a certain enemy known as Lord Draven. Lord Draven is an enemy that travels between dimensions, and he comes from the anti-verse dimension, and he plans to destroy all Rangers. So what happens is that eventually they decide to head off towards where Tommy Oliver is, because they want to see what he knows about the situation and if he can help out. So they end up heading off to Reefside. Yes, they specifically say they're heading to Reefside, which is so cool. So they actually head there. We actually see the house where the base was in Dino Thunder, and what happens is that they end up seeing Tommy Oliver. He's actually walking around with Draven, and what happens is that Draven is actually being helped by Madame Odious. So that's good to see that they're actually incorporating the main villain for Power Rangers, Ninja Steel and / Super Ninja Steel, but more so Super Ninja Steel, into this episode. That's actually very nice, because it does not always happen where the main villain for the season actually gets focus. A lot of times when it comes to these kind of episodes, they're kind of put in the background and not put in the put as a major or significant character in the anniversary episode, at least from the ones we've had. And again, we've had a bunch of them, but we haven't had like a huge amount, so it's still very cool to see that. So what happens is that she ends up providing Lord Draven with these special mega arrows, which if shot will cause the dimensional barriers to break. If when the first one is shot, you have to wait till the sky turns red, and then every subsequent one you have to do the same thing. After the third one is shot, the dimensional barrier will be shattered, and at that point Lord Draven can attack any dimension he wants without any issues at all. There's no protective barriers between dimensions, so it could lead to serious chaos and danger. What ends up happening is that we also end up discovering the fact that Tommy Oliver that we saw is actually a robot that's posing as Tommy Oliver, and the reason why these Rangers are missing is because anyone that was a Ranger can trust Tommy Oliver. So by portraying him, the instant someone sees them, they're going to trust him, even though in reality he's evil. He's not the true Tommy Oliver that many of us love and know. So that's a very cool, clever story element that they incorporated here. And eventually what happens is that Lord Draven and also the evil robot Tommy end up heading off through a portal to the anti-verse dimension. At that point what happens is that the other Rangers, so Wes, Coda, and Gemma, as well as the Ninja Steel Rangers, end up heading off using Wes's device to travel to the anti-verse dimension. Once there, what does end up happening is that we end up seeing a couple of things happen. For starters, we end up seeing for the anti-verse, with the villain situation, they are developing out robots. Now, I think that this actually happens in a slightly different order, where initially it starts off with the Rangers' perspective. Basically what's happening is that they're traveling through a shrined off area, and the idea is that they have to get to the fortress where Lord Draven is. At the same time, what we do end up seeing is that with the villains, Lord Draven is trying to create his evil Ranger soldiers. And what happens is that we end up seeing the evil robot Tommy, who's going around to the Rangers that are kept in these special chairs that allow them to make robot Ranger clones using their DNA, I guess. And the idea is that we end up first seeing Antonio sitting in one of them, but he also goes over to, I think, like Rocky at one point, and you end up seeing I guess it's the 6 other Rangers that are currently locked up, although one of them actually escapes. Now, that Ranger isn't clear at first, but the guards try to stop him, but he manages to whoosh right past, and he manages to also destroy the Ranger copying machine that allows him to create copies of Power Rangers and make his evil clones. But they have they have so many Ranger, Robot Ranger copies already, so they have plenty enough to defeat the Rangers and go between dimensions. No issues there. What does end up happening is that the Rangers do end up, as I said before, trying to go down a pathway similar to the one in the preview clip, where they end up having to fight off some of the Basher bots. For example, Coda destroys one by doing an attack that is out of nowhere, and then we end up seeing some of the other Rangers having to deal with some Basher bots, and then they are surrounded. At that point, what happens is that a Ranger whooshes right past them, destroying all the Basher bots in their way on both ends, and then he runs towards them, and it's revealed to be Tommy Oliver as the Black Dino Thunder Ranger. The thing is that he says that the enemies had no idea that with my Black Dino Thunder Ranger powers, I'm able to turn invisible, which is very true if you know Power Rangers Dino Thunder. So what happens is that at that point, Tommy mentions the fact that the other Rangers are locked up in Lord Draven's, evil base, and that's where they have to go to rescue the others. So what happens is that at this point, Tommy decides to go off with the 3 legendary Rangers, so Coda, Wes, and Gemma, to rescue the other 6 Rangers that are trapped. And in the meantime, the Ninja Steel Rangers end up having to deal with some Basher bots and Lord Draven. At that point, we end up seeing the Ninja Steel Rangers fighting. They use their different finishing moves. They destroy all the Basher bots. And then what happens is that they end up doing an escape move to kind of get away. Sarah and Brody end up heading off, further up towards where the Mega Arrows are, because they end up seeing the whole situation in the past, and so they want to get to them. What we do end up seeing prior to this also, and prior to them even seeing Tommy, is that Lord Draven does manage to shoot off one of the Mega Arrows, which leads to a shattering in the dimensional barrier. So just keep it in mind. Now, as far as things go here, they have, he's obviously waiting to shoot off another one. The other 4 Rangers are trying to sneak around Lord Draven, and in the meantime, what we do end up seeing is that the legendary Rangers end up intruding into the building where the 4 legendary Rangers end up intruding into the building. They deal with the Basher bots and destroy them very easily. In fact, what happens is that when they destroy them, they turn to dust instantaneously, practically. And at that point, what happens is that they run towards the Rangers that are trapped and destroy all the copying machines, which leads to them not being turned into copying, like Rangers that are being copied anymore. And so they end up waking up. So we actually see all 6 of them. Pretty much all of them have like some sort of line. Like Gia has a line for sure. Rocky has a line. Antonio has a line. Trent has a line. Like all of them have at least one little line. Some have a little bit more than others. Kat has a line. It's done well. It's done very, very well. I do appreciate that. I like the fact that each of them got something, even though, obviously some got a little bit more than others. TJ had a line like where he says that when Tommy mentions that Lord Draven captured them, it's like, I thought I would never have to hear that name again. The reason why he would even know of it is probably because after they were captured, they probably heard the name by the robot that this is Lord Draven's doing. So they probably heard about it from the evil Tommy robot. Now what happens is that after the Rangers end up trying to escape, what does end up happening is that Tommy is confronted by the evil robot ranger of himself, and what happens is that something very cool occurs. Tommy has to fight himself, well, this evil robot version of himself, and he ends up using his new morpher, which is the Master Morpher. This morpher basically looks like a typical power morpher, but it has like some differences with its design, and what it does is that he's able to transform into any of his ranger forms. So for example, the first form that he takes when he's fighting this robot is his Zeo Ranger form. So he transforms into Zeo Ranger 5. He doesn't have like a regular morphing sequence where we actually see like the official morphing sequence, but he transforms into Zeo Ranger 5 and fights him. He also transforms into the White Ranger, and he transforms into the Green Ranger. So we see all three of those forms used in this battle. What we don't see in this episode at all is Turbo, just so that anyone that doesn't know knows now. There is no showing of Turbo at all, which is kind of weird. You would think that they would have shown off Turbo even though it isn't his main color. But maybe it's in the extended cut, so again, we'll have to hold off and wait and see if that actually happens or not. What does end up happening from here is that he does manage to defeat the evil robot ranger version of himself. The Ninja Steel Rangers are trying to deal with Lord Draven, and they're not doing extremely well, but at one point what happens is that they end up heading up onto a special platform, and they're not in the best situation ever because suddenly Lord Draven has this huge army ready to attack. But what happens is that the 10 Rangers that were legendary Rangers end up appearing behind them, and the Ninja Steel Rangers end up transforming with the legendary Rangers. So it's very cool to see that they don't have like the official morphing sequence where they go through like each ranger and they do like a regular morphing sequence. That would have been amazing, maybe in the extended cut, but just in general it's not something that they would have done for this version because there really wasn't enough time. So I just wanted to say that right up front. Now what does end up happening is they transform. We do actually see the Rangers for Ninja Steel fighting alongside the legendary Rangers. So for example, take Mighty Morphin Red, which is Rocky in this case. Rocky ends up fighting alongside Brody against some of the evil robot Rangers. Gia fights with RPM Silver, fights alongside RPM Silver. Trent fights alongside not Zoe, sorry, I'm using the actor's name, Haley. Levi fights with alongside Antonio from Samurai. Calvin fights alongside, I think he doesn't fight alongside Ciara, I don't believe, or maybe he does. Honestly, I'm forgetting a little bit. Or am I thinking it's someone else? Maybe not Ciara. I keep on saying Ciara. Gia. You know, it's hard for me to do that sometimes because it's like I know the actors and I also know the Rangers very well. We do end up seeing all the legendary Rangers fight in some capacity, some more than others. Ninja Steel Blue, I believe, fights alongside In Space Blue, which is cool. I like that a lot. There's a bunch of different ones that are shown that are very, very cool. Eventually, they do manage to defeat all the evil robots, and then at that point, what happens is that with the army destroyed, Badana notices this, and so she mentions it to Madame Odious. So at that point, Madame Odious ends up using the beam to make Lord Draven big, and I forgot to mention this already, but he does shoot off an arrow prior to the legendary Rangers showing up that ends up hitting the barrier for a second time. But now with him big, the red sky ends up happening. At this point, he's about to shoot off his third arrow. And what happens is that the Rangers try to fight him when he's big, and they're not doing so well. But right as he shoots off the arrow, Tommy ends up transforming, because he's actually a Green Ranger at this point. He transforms initially into his Green Ranger form, but at this point, when he's about to stop the arrow, what he does is he actually transforms into his White Ranger form, and he ends up using his Falcon Zord to quickly fly up into the air, and he's inside of the Falcon Zord, by the way. He's like in the cockpit area. He flies up there, he grabs the arrow using the Falcon Zord, and he manages to stop it in its tracks. The other Rangers that are on the ground end up doing a team attack using their different firearm weapons to actually defeat Lord Draven, which is super, super cool. I actually love that whole sequence. And then Lord Draven is destroyed, leading to the barrier fixing itself, and the Rangers that are legendary Rangers each saying different phrases. One of the phrases, I'm trying to remember right now what it was. It was something very cool. I'm actually forgetting the specific phrase that he said because it's been a little bit of time right now. Rangers forever defending together. That was something that was said. I believe that was said by Tommy. But just in general, it was very, very cool. I like the cockpit image that we saw of the White Ranger. There's even a point at the very end when all the Rangers are going into their portals to return back to their dimensions, where what happens is that Brody says, "Now this was epic." Again, that's something that he's known for saying, that was epic or something like that. Basically, this time around, he can say it, it's justified. It was done very well, but it's very clear that it was cut short. There's a lot more that probably is there, and this is just what they could fit into this 22-minute slot. Again, if they had more time, if they had gone for a full hour situation, who knows what they could have done. And again, this is just the main cut for the show. When the actual episode airs on Netflix, then we'll get to see all the extended footage, what scenes led up to different events in this. Maybe we'll see more footage of other Rangers, hear more lines from them, and it won't be as restricted as this one is. Again, it's not as bad as Legendary Battle, where like we really had very little conversational points from the Legendary Rangers. This time around, each of them got like at least 2 or 3 lines. Even though some were more significant and more important than others, they still kind of kept things interesting. And it was also nice to see that they actually used the Dino Thunder base location. That was really cool. Also, the references to stuff from the future comics with JJ, and also seeing the Falcon Zord was really, really exciting, and the Master Morpher. I like the way that they use it. I'm curious as to whether or not the extended cut will feature the Turbo Red Ranger form for Tommy, because they didn't show it here, even though it is one of his forms. But it's still very cool. I liked how they used him as an evil ranger as well. That's really great. This is the 3rd time we've actually seen an evil Tommy now. There was the well, Tommy versus Tommy, because there was the one where it was the Green Ranger versus the White Ranger. It was the Dino Thunder one, I believe, and then it was this one. So that's very cool. Just in general, I think it was done really, really well, and I liked it a lot, and I'm looking forward to the Netflix extended cut, because this was something awesome, and I can't wait to see how they're going to expand this. Also, keep in mind, as of September 1st, they're actually going to have it where on Jason David Frank, the actor that played Tommy Oliver's Instagram, I believe, and maybe on his YouTube channel, when he does his like special videos, he'll actually showcase about an hour's worth of behind the scenes footage from this episode. So keep that in mind if you want to see some of the behind the scenes footage, some of the cool shots of all that. That's where you'll likely see it. There was a video that he posted where he showed each of the Rangers morphing together, and we can get to see it in this, so I'm definitely looking forward to that being something hopefully that will show up in the extended cut, because why else would they have filmed it unless they just wanted to do it for fun, which could have been the case. Again, we don't know for a fact, but we'll see. So otherwise, that's about it for me, guys. I thought it was really good, as you can clearly tell. Power Rangers has been a long time franchise for me. It's been something that I've been so in love with and appreciated for years and years. It was something that I originally got out of when I was probably in 1st grade or something like that, and then I got back into it probably a couple years, like 2 years later, and I got out of it for a very short time, and then I ended up sticking with it, and I've been stuck with it for several years now, and it's been something that I honestly have enjoyed and loved and loved and loved and loved, and it's been a big passion of mine, and I've remained connected to it for years and years and years. I've gone to Power Morphicon now 3 times because of how much I've loved it. It's led to a lot of really important things in my life, my passions, my interests, things that I'm doing career-wise, all sorts of stuff. It's been a part of all that. It's been reasons for it, you name it. Inspirational factors. There's so many different things that Power Rangers has done for me as a person, but overall I just want to say I really enjoyed this episode as an anniversary episode. It definitely isn't my favorite one, but it's definitely up there. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing the extended cut because I feel like there was so much more that they probably have that could make this episode even better than it already was. Because again, this episode was done really well, and it was no Legendary Battle. It was much better than Legendary Battle. Was it as good as Once a Ranger or Forever Red? I'm not sure. I feel like probably not, but I think it was done really well. It was definitely not a Legendary Battle episode. It was much better than that. How much better? I feel like I need to see the extended cut before I give my official final judgment. I feel like, you know, with this alone, it's definitely not like the most amazing episode, but with the extended cut, I feel like it's going to only further enhance it. I think it was done really well, but I think that that's going to definitely help it in a lot of places where it needs help, and it needs to give a little bit more story and more context, just in general. So that's about it. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I know this video was long, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.